Alexis, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. Welcome to the Real Life Podcast with the Five Brothers.
Excited to be here, excited with what y'all are doing. I think it's super important to get these stories out and let people know they're not alone. So
Heck yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for being willing to jump on this podcast and share your story. I'm super excited to hear what you have to say, and the rest of the world is super excited as well.
I'm excited to see what comes out of my mouth too.
We'll see.
Yeah. So Alexis, for our listeners, if you don't mind just kind of giving a brief, overview of who you are and where you come from. I know you're an Austin native. That's awesome.
Let's go. One of the few.
Yes. One of the few.
Hey, I'm born and raised Austinite, Breckenridge Hospital, which no longer exists. I have a younger sister. I am a type 1 diabetic. I was diagnosed when I was 10. I have spent a good part of my childhood and then adulthood dealing with depression, which I've also used self-harm and occasional suicidal ideations to kind of cope with that and sought help. It's something that I've been working through and continue to work on, and have found different ways to approach that in various chapters of my life. As a kid, and probably even still now, busyness was the way where I didn't have to deal with my thoughts or me. And so it was like, cool, like that's what I'm going to do. So I did everything in high school, every sport you can imagine, every club. And cool. I just kept going because I never had to sit with myself because that was utterly terrifying. And I was like, I don't even know how to do that. So it's been a journey, and it is one that I know it's a cliche, but the ups and downs, they really just feel like mountains and valleys. And it's like, okay, where can I get a plateau? Like, can I coast for a little bit?
Yeah.
Just make me feel like, all right, we're ready, we're stable, we're steady. You're like, oh, great. Then life.
Yeah, that's life. So, okay, you said you were diagnosed at the age of 10.
Yep.
Is that kind of when the depression, you were diagnosed with diabetes?
Correct.
At 10. Was that kind of when the depression set in, or?
No, usually juvenile diabetics have a honeymoon period where their pancreas is slowly starting to no longer produce insulin. So you're learning all the things, and that becomes the focus of how do I manage this whole change in lifestyle? Mm-hmm. How do I learn to take my blood sugar, insulin, count carbs, all of the things?
Yeah.
We're going from I was terrified of needles as a kid. At the age of 7, 4 people had to hold me down, and then a nurse administered the vaccine or the shot.
Wow.
And then you're told, you're going to have to give yourself a shot 5 to 6 times a day, every day for the rest of your life. So that became the focus. And then I kind of started growing up, probably 12, 13 teenage years, where it was okay, here's the angsty journal writing. And then you hit hormones and start seeing the actual world.
Mm-hmm,
and that's when you're like, oh, it's not the whole I don't want to grow up and be an adult. I grew up early. I moved out when I was 16, but very dysfunctional family with both of my parents. I was kind of the responsible one of the household, which is hard to take on when you're 12 and you're managing a chronic disease by yourself. So it just started to make this cool, everything is on me. I have to have this perfection facade. And that can't break. I'm the one people rely on. And so that's what I have to put out to the world.
Yeah.
And so it further kind of pushed down anything that I should have dealt with at the time, or not just let it all build.
Yeah. So you said you almost just continuously were active and occupied your mind through sports. Do you think that was kind of your avenue to get away from the depression?
I think it was. I think a lot of it was escaping time at home, but it was also when there were times where I was thinking about suicide, the irony is I was living for other people, because I would sit there and be like, okay, what if I'm not here? But I have this obligation, or I have that obligation, or they need me in this game. And so it was just moving on to the next thing that I was responsible for, or someone was depending on me. even now I've had moments where I'm like, I'm a major to-do list person. And I'm like, I'm living for the list. I'm literally sustaining myself from one obligation to the next, for better or worse. But it was, again, like, this is how I keep going because of other people. And that was one of the things that, like, I had to learn was not super healthy. It was a skill or a perspective that got me through at that time.
Right.
But when you grow up, you're like, oh, no. You can't put on everybody else's oxygen masks before your own kind of concept.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Well, so just so like we kind of get an idea of like the timeline, I think you mentioned, kind of 14 is when you felt like, depression kind of started to move into your life. What for those next, I guess to get a timeline in place just for everyone in their heads, were you struggling with depression for, a certain period of time? Like, what did that kind of look like?
I don't know that it was it wasn't formally diagnosed until I was an adult.
Okay.
However, there is a major family history of it, along with being an alcoholic. My dad, he had major depressive disorder, and then my mom had postpartum depression after my sister was born, along with being bipolar, obsessive compulsive hoarding, and the depression. So there's a lot of history of mental health.
Right.
So it was, again, and not having necessarily the best role model of how you manage these thoughts, feelings, things like that, and trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So it started with like finding someone to talk to. I had a couple of high school teachers that like, I am probably literally alive today because of the support that they provided, and
That's
that they were the
amazing.
place to like talk to confide. It was a safe space. And then it was like, okay, you go to college and it's a new adaptation. I've been out since I was in high school. And then I went to Odessa, Texas to play soccer in college on a full ride.
I didn't know that.
way. What?
Yeah. UTPV.
No way.
D2. But the problem is I get there and everybody is only interested in drugs, alcohol, and boys. And I'm like, well, shoot.
Yeah.
I'm 0 for 3 there.
Dang.
And so you're
yeah.
like, oh, and the town is like 20 years behind the time. And you're like, all right, it's a culture shock when you show up to the first day of 2 days and the assistant coach is yelling, shag it, faggot.
Oh, my God.
And you're like,
Are you serious?
100%.
Jeez.
And again, so I was like, oh, I'm not in Austin anymore.
No, yeah.
So it's like, okay, 2 years was what I put in. Now I need to leave so I don't get lynched. I need to go back to civilization and culture.
Yeah.
So I was like finished up at Texas State and then found rugby, and the rest
Let's
was
go.
history.
You played rugby at Texas State?
Yes.
Wow.
And then also I spent 5 years playing with the Austin Valkyries. So it's the Austin women's team. So we
No
were
way.
D1. Right before COVID, we competed in the national championships for D1 women and lost by 3 points.
No
which is
way.
the equivalent to like a field goal if you're comparing it to football. So I was
That's
like,
crazy.
man.
I never knew that about you.
Oh yeah. But we were
Wow.
like total underdogs. Like everyone was like, there's no way. And so we got there and like, it's like just enough to get there. Like that was the claim to fame of like, we did what nobody thought we could do.
I mean, that's huge.
Let's go.
So
That's
I was
huge.
like, that's probably one of like the coolest moments of my life or like experiences. Cause I was like, man, look what we accomplished.
Heck
and
yeah.
It's so much a team sport as well. Like there's
for
15
sure.
people on the field. It doesn't matter if you have the biggest all-star ever. They cannot win that game alone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's again, like there's this constant theme in my life of like the people around me supporting or being there or like literally leaning on, holding on to those people. So
That's awesome. So I kind of want to just backtrack and kind of just unpack everything. Okay, so for someone out there who just got diagnosed with and is now a diabetic, like what would you say to them?
you initially think like my life is, as I knew it, is over, which is partially true, but it's not in the like, I can't do anything, I'm limited for the rest of my life. You learn to adapt, and it was a different way to see the world or think about things or be more cautious or know like, okay, I can only do this or I can do that. And like And one of the big things for me was camp. And so I went to Camp Bluebonnet, and I mean, to this day, we still have like speakers that come in. Like this year's speaker spoke on Broadway, or he's like performing on Broadway. He's the understudy for Mufasa. We've had like D1 football players. We've had Olympic athletes. And so just to really like, you think, oh crap, I can never do anything. But then I'm like, I played Division I rugby. I've done this. I've done that. I've traveled the country in my car. Like, you find ways to adapt. And so it's a blessing, I would say. Like, I think of it as, like, I don't wish it on anybody.
Right.
But I was able to get positive things out of it.
Yeah. You took it for what it's worth, and you adapted, which has now transformed you into the person you are today.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. I love it. No, I love it. Okay, so that was at 13. What was it like being you kind of already discussed it, but being a 13-year-old told that you are a diabetic?
You initially are just in shock. Like, you don't know what that means, what that entails. And then to realize that, like, as a 10-year-old, you're going to have to do this because your parents aren't capable, it's not in their mental wheelhouse. Like, they do their best, but you're like, oh, no, you're gonna. And it was like, there was the financial burden of it. It was like in and out of insurance. It was a time when insulin cost thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like learning I couldn't rely on certain people and had to take on the world by myself. So it just kept like, this is where the responsibilities just start stacking.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the guilt too of like, oh, I'm a financial burden, or other people have to like want to treat me differently, or like there's like the kid gloves, or oh, you're diabetic, you can't have sugar, or things like that, these like misnomers and myths. And you're like, that's not actually true. Like, you don't know about it. Do you want to be educated on it? Like, we can have a conversation. But it was a lot to just like, okay.
I'm probably going to ask a little bit of a deeper question here, so feel free to
bring it on.
feel free to not answer, answer however you want. But when you were kind of hitting these waves of depression, what were you feeling? Like, what was going through your mind? And just because the reason I ask is there's numerous people out there in the world that have gone or are going through exactly what you went through. So I would love to just kind of hear what that was like, and kind of how you felt and what those feelings were.
I think one of the biggest would be like a powerlessness, and that translates then into a hopelessness, because you can't see the change. Like, you can't see what's going to change us. You think you're stuck in this moment, in this space, in this rut, and that like, oh, everyone just says it'll get better, and you're like, but when? How much do I have to go through until I get to that point of it being better? And like, is that going to be a permanent thing, or is it going to be fleeting? And so, I mean, it feels like there's a constant weight just on your shoulder of like, I keep working and working and working, but I don't necessarily see the result. I don't see the change. So it's almost like you're just going through the motions and putting on a happy face, because that's what people expect from you, or that's what makes them comfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
So the past year, it's got worse than it ever had, and it was a culmination of events that I knew about, that I'm still learning about, figuring out, that maybe I'll never know. One of the big parts was meds, and so there were other contributing factors, but there was a night where it was like, I don't feel them. They're not doing anything. Like, it was an all of the sudden. And then it was like, okay, I can feel myself slipping. I can feel myself slowly making my way towards that crisis point. And then, so you reach out and you're like, okay, talk to your psychiatrist, talk to your doctor. They're like, we'll try something else. And went through this like awful period of just the meds that were prescribed made it worse. I had like severe, like I was passed out for almost 2 days because of one, or it was like this made it even worse. And like the intrusive thoughts and suicidal ideation all came in. And then you like have doctors that you're like, help. And they're like, 2 weeks later, here's the generic templated email of, oh, if you're struggling, here's the suicide crisis hotline.
No.
Or like 3 weeks later, the doctor actually gets back to you and he's like, you should stop taking that med. And so there becomes like this trust issue and this fear. And I'd been lucky up until that point to not have super adverse reactions. And so that and starting to feel like the thoughts were not my own. So it was the first time I'd ever had intrusive thoughts where it's like, cool, I've had a gun in my house for 3 years. I've never thought about it. But all of a sudden, that thought would creep in, or the self-harming, like that had been something I had done throughout the years, and it was never super in-depth. It was occasional to take the edge off, whatever. But the times, like the frequency increased, and like where I did it increased and got a little bit more into dangerous zones. But it was just one of those, like, it's not working. Even that didn't provide the relief that I was seeking. And so everything was just spiraling out, and I didn't know who I was. And then there was a moment where, like, a night when it got real bad, and I was like, I am completely out of control. Like, my thoughts, I have no, like, there was no way to trust myself. It was just everything had gone, and the spiral wasn't going to be stopped.
What did you do, like, in that moment?
In that moment, I reached out to a friend.
Yeah.
Who had known that I was struggling and had tried her best to, like, help. That night, her advice, I think, backfired a little bit. So she's very religious. And I believe in a higher power, but capital R religion is not treated
I got you.
people that well, or has been hypocritical.
Yeah.
And in that moment, she's talking about, she's like, literally says, I can't save you. Only God can. And it's this moment of just like, okay, well, if this is in my head, like, if this is what God wants, then, like, cool. If he wanted me not to, then he would stop me. And it was like, then logic brain comes in, and she's of the mindset that as long as you accept Christ as your savior, then you will go into his eternal kingdom. It doesn't matter if it's the 11th hour, you're on the cross saying, like, yes, I believe it. And so I'm sitting there and I was like, with that belief, why do I not just say, I believe that Jesus Christ is my savior, and go to paradise and leave all of this pain and all of this, like, tormentation behind? And it was this weird, just like, and it wasn't the person who was going to rush and, like, be there. It was just like, oh, I can't save you. And so it was just this flipped switch of realizing, like, at the moment it was like, I need to incapacitate myself so I don't make a fatal choice. So it was like, okay, let's go have a couple of shots. Let's take a few sleeping aids, whatever. But just to, like, there is no other way to stop my mind without physically putting my body at rest.
Yeah.
And that was just like, okay, this is the new rock bottom. And, like, what do I need to do to get out of this and kind of become myself again?
So can I ask, during that moment, you're on the phone with your friend, for people out there who might be your friend in that context, who's on the phone with their friend who's in, your position of the suicidal ideation, like, hitting home, what would you have wanted to hear from your friend in that moment?
I think at that moment it was a huge thing for me to, like, hey, we really need help, and there's something about the presence of another person. So I almost feel like part of me just wanted to be saved, of, like, somebody else, like me not having to save myself, because I was so tired of being the one that saves myself.
Yeah.
And I did like end up calling another friend, and she had no idea the mental state I was in, but she just talked to me long enough for me to be like, okay, I'm sleepy. And I've told her after the fact, I was like, hey, you know that you picking up that phone that night literally probably saved my life.
Wow.
And it like, you know, like people don't know how they can affect you and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
But just the people, and like when you go and like part of like working through this, they talk about like a crisis plan. Like, okay, when you feel like this, and whether it is whatever maladaptive coping skill it is, whether it's drinking, whether it's cutting, whether it's suicidal ideation, hey, who are you going to call and reach out to? What activity can shift your mind from this? Whether it's taking a walk, working out, writing, I mean, even down to like take a marker and color on your wrist so it symbolizes what you would like to be doing, or like breath work, or hey, change of scenery.
Mm-hmm.
Just different ways that are going to kind of shift your focus and kind of let you get out of that space. And so you just tweak it until you figure out or whatever. Or like, okay, what time of day? What day is it? Who can I call? Who's awake?
Yeah.
Like, whose shift is it now?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, well, I mean, that's an incredible moment in your life, and probably a defining one, and you'll never forget it. And I just appreciate you sharing that, because someone out there is definitely going through what you went through in that moment. And for them to have just the ability to know that there are ways to get through it. And whether that's literally calling a friend showing up, or like putting yourself to sleep so that you don't make a permanent decision for a temporary problem. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. And it sounds like in that moment, what really, really helped was just talking to someone. Is there anything else that, you know, you think if someone's going through something similar, they could do that you did, or was that kind of the number one resource at that moment was just talking to a friend?
Talking to a friend, I'd also noticed leading up to this that like, not consciously, but systematically, I had started pushing away and avoiding all of the things that would have helped me. So I didn't go hang out with friends or talk to them as much. I didn't go out. I didn't work out. I like stopped doing all of the self-care things that probably would have put me in a better headspace. And so it was, again, just like isolation is dangerous.
Yeah.
And learning to accept that it is healthy and often necessary to ask for help when you need it, to realize this is beyond my control, and like I need someone else who has more experience with this, a different perspective, something to be able to like, okay, provide that guidance to help you like get out of the rock bottom that you are in.
Yeah. Wow. I'm speechless. That is amazing. So, how did you get out of that?
I have never felt this way before, which means I need to seek a solution that I have never sought before. So it was looking into intensive outpatient. So like group therapy with like a psychiatrist and doctors that are overseeing the process, checking on your meds, things like that. The place I went wasn't what I needed. And so I was like, okay, next step up is an actual inpatient or like residential program. And that was a fiasco in and of itself, too, when you look at like, what will insurance cover? What place is not being actively like sued or investigated by the state? Cool. And then another hurdle, a lot of places won't take you if you are diabetic because it is an extra liability. So their staff is trained for like, okay, these certain things, but because diabetes is like a specialized care.
No way.
There were a lot of places that were like, nope, we can't do it. And it was like crazy. I was like, how is this the world that we live in?
Yeah.
So the program you got into, was it beneficial, do you think?
I think extremely. Not only I mean, they did a multitude of different like approaches therapy wise. So it was like DBT, CPT, CBT, internal family systems. They incorporated like AA constructs, but also one like adult children of alcoholics.
Okay.
Like everyone's kind of familiar with the Serenity Prayer, but ACA's version is, God grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to realize that one is me. So realizing like I can't control other people, I can't control what they do, and ultimately I have to be able to figure out how to change and adapt to the situation. And it was just one of those like you hear it and you're like, that's gonna hold space in my mind, in my heart, because it just resonated.
Yeah. Is there any other resource or avenue or outlet that you turn to to get through what you were going through?
I've consistently been in therapy. Some sessions are more helpful than others, or modalities. But really, like, what it came down to is finding a support system. Whether that's like a best friend, a group of friends. Three of my friends and I, we all get together monthly for our brunch bunch, or we go to someone's house and they cook dinner or whatever, and we check in. And it was realizing we were all going through some mental health or like crappy life things. And it was like, okay, at 6 o'clock, someone's going to text the group and we're going to like check in. So things like that, or like a knitting group or whatever. I think recovery programs, they're not for everybody. But there are so many different applications of it. Like I think I initially started with Codependence Anonymous, and it's kind of like free therapy from people who understand what you were going through. And it's crazy. You'll just sit there, and even if you're listening, you're like, oh my God, that is exactly how I feel. I just didn't know how to word it, and you said it. And so looking into the resources or support groups, if you lost someone, if you're grieving, if whatever the case is, just finding someone you're not alone. And it's the scariest thing, because all you want to do is just like push people away, because you're like, oh no, I'm weak and I shouldn't be doing this and I'm pathetic. Like I remember at one point my dad had texted me and he's like, how are you feeling? And in my head, I like wrote it down in my journal, and it was like suicidal, stressed, overwhelmed, broken, pathetic, insufficient. And then I responded, I'm okay. How are you? Because it's so much easier to like, what is the palatable answer? Or when I would avoid things I'd committed to, like, oh, I'm sick, or my tire is flat. Because that's what society accepts, not, hey, I can't go speak today or be the energy that you need because I want to kill myself. And so it's being able to like, how do we start having these conversations? How do we realize that this is something that more people are struggling with than not, I would argue, especially as things are progressing in life right now in society.
Absolutely.
So
I completely agree with that. And I actually did that. Like, I would be at home alone, just in my own thoughts, terrible thoughts. Hey, what are you doing tonight? I'm like, there is no way I am going out right now. There's no way. And then I just either don't respond or, oh, early night, like, because people don't want to hear about other people's problems. And I think that's where our world is taking a shift, because mental health is so prevalent these days. And I think people are more open to having those conversations now. And I think, at least for me, like, I didn't want other people to know what I was going through, because I think in my past mindset, I didn't want it to reflect bad on me. Like, I don't want people to know I'm going through this, because my reputation will be tarnished, like, and I think that's a real thing. I think people are afraid to speak up about what they're truthfully going through, because people will view them differently. And I hope to say that in our world today, people don't view people differently based on, the thoughts they have.
It's the whole like neurotypical, neurodivergent, all of that coming into play, the masking of like, okay, this is how my brain works, whether that is mental health, depression struggles, or like I just see the world differently.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, how do we
Yeah.
translate one perspective to the other
Yeah.
and be able to have communication and conversations in that way, where we're not judging who the person is or what they're dealing with, but just like for what they are saying and expressing, and just this idea of, hey, I've got big feelings, big things going on, and I need someone to stand here with me and face them. Even if it's just for this minute, this conversation, whatever.
Yeah. And what I've learned is that even though you might not want to tell someone what you're currently going through, your loved ones, your friends, they want you to tell them.
Oh, yeah.
They want you to tell them because then they know you better. And if they are true friends, they will stick by your side and they will be there at the moment you call them for anything. And if they aren't, then they're not your true friends.
It's interesting to also like reverse that perspective and be like, if my friend was going through this and they didn't talk to me and they did something
right
that they can't undo, how would that make me feel? So kind of realizing, like putting that onus back on yourself of like, hey, they do care. They want to help. There's a thing on the internet where it was like, basically 8 minutes is what people need to like shift gears. And so it was almost like this, use it as a code word. Find a few people and be like, hey, I need 8 minutes. And so it was knowing like, this is code for you're in crisis and I have 8 minutes in my day to potentially help save your life kind of concept. And maybe it's not that dire, but it's still, okay, here's the headspace I am in and I need a wee bit amount of time to just let it out.
Me personally, I didn't know anything about Coop, about his situation. He didn't tell me a single word. I thought he was in Houston, having the time of his life, lawyer, hanging out with all his friends all the time. FaceTime me like at, midnight out with his friends and he's partying and all that. So I thought everything was great. And then if you would have told me what was happening in your life, dude, I would have been there in half a second. And I've already told him this, but I would have been there in half a second. And I would have said, we're going to figure this out. Like, I'm here. Like, I don't necessarily know what to say or do, but like, I got you, man. And like, I'm here. So for people that, would be in kind of my situation during that time, like, it comes down to, Coop being, willing to reach out and tell me this, but still, like, I think so many people are so open and willing to and wanting to help, especially, family members, loved ones, friends, but just in that situation, I had no idea. And I'm so glad that he did eventually tell me. And I wish he told me about, day one. So.
Me too.
Yeah. I guess the point I'm making is I'm glad Coop told me, and I wish he told me earlier. And for anyone out there right now, if you just reach out to a friend, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to there's nothing bad that's going to come out of that. And I guarantee you they'll be willing to listen and help, because I was.
I started being a little more vulnerable with the telling of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I have yet to find a person who judges me as less than or weaker because I'm going through this. More commonly than not, in like our networking group, I admitted this to the group. I was like, I wasn't really on a hill country sabbatical. I was in residential treatment because I wanted to kill myself. And it was, again, everybody came up after and they were like, I have struggled with this. I have struggled with that. If you ever need anything, I don't care what time it is, call me. And it's every person, even if I'm not super close with them, there's an immediate, like, I get that. I understand. And again, I'm just like, just tell people, like, getting over that fear of just like, I have to be perfect or nobody can know because there's so much shame attached to it. And you're just like breaking through that.
It's a barrier that you do have to break through. I think we all do. Shame is a real thing. Guilt is a real thing. Feeling that you're a burden is a real thing. But you, at the end of the day, are none of those.
Exactly.
So I love that you said people in your life. And what I mean by that is you used people as an avenue to be a reason to live, to not end your life. You had responsibilities. You had a sister. You had parents. You had friends. And you used their life almost as a protection from harming yourself, from ending your life. Like, people care about you, whether they explicitly tell you or it's an implicit thing within themselves. They care about you. And they will be hurt if you do decide to go down that route. And I think that's just something we should always try to keep in mind when we're going through these circumstances or situations or thoughts.
I think part of what you brought up too, or like triggered something in my head of like perspective is super important. So whether that is taking into account the other people in your life or even like how you view the world or situations, like we are the translators of our own experience. We decide if it's good, if it's bad, what it means to us, how that reflects us as a person. Right? Like everybody's got their own idea of who we are, and they're also not thinking about us as much as we think they are. But it's like Oscar Wilde once said, like, we're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. And it was just like, again, one of those things you're just like, goosebumps. Like,
Yeah.
you can change what you look at, and it can
Right.
change all the things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think you nailed it. Having like that kind of just attempt to kind of change your perspective on literally everything and look at the bright side of every situation. I've started doing that a lot more, like out of college. Once kind of real world hit, I was like, all right, I could wake up and be pissed off because I ran out of coffee or something. Or it's like, you know, I could wake up and I could realize how beautiful of a day it is, and I can go and get a coffee real quick at Starbucks and it won't matter. And then, you know, I can hit a couple green lights and I'm flying through the city and I'm like, let's go. Like, you know, I'm missing all the red lights. And I guess what my point I'm trying to say is you can make that flip in your mind and look at the bright side of every situation. And realize that even when things are bad and something bad happens, there is good that comes from it. But being able to see that and understand it and capture it, it's hard, and it's just a perspective on you know, life, like you said. So I agree though.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason.
Right.
Like, firmest believer in that. And it's like, this caused me to realize that the way I was living my life was not sustainable. Something had to change. And that started with me. And here we are.
There we go.
That's honestly so true.
I love it.
And that's what happened with me too, is like I changed. Like, it was really my exterior environment that I think made me so not upset, but depressed. Like, just what I was putting myself through. And I realized that I did need a change, which prompted me to move to Austin, which prompted me to join a run club, which prompted me to join BNI, which prompted me to gain all these good friends. And it's just like,
do this podcast
and
There
do
we
this
go.
change
podcast.
and save lives.
Yes, like
We're flying.
it's so true that what you're going through is temporary, and that sometimes, yeah, you do need a change. Sometimes it can be a radical change, sometimes it can be a small change, but you likely will need to change something. And once you realize that and you identify a change, fully pursue it. And I agree. I'm very much of the belief that darkness leads to light, and the light will use the darkness for good.
One thing I want to say, when you said change, if if you look at your situation, the biggest thing you did, and I could be wrong here, but this is just one man's opinion. What you changed the most was that you pushed yourself away from isolation, and you got more involved in groups. You moved to Austin. We started living together. We started hanging out with, my friends. You joined Run Club BNI. A bunch of other friends joined your life.
100%, yes.
I mean, now you look like just a happy little bunny.
Bunny?
No, I'll just get it.
The Ask Bunny who runs all the like crazy marathons and how it works.
You surrounded yourself with people that you knew care about you and love you. Whereas in Houston, I feel like, well, I don't know.
I agree to an extent. I had a great community in Houston.
That's true.
I still have several friends in Houston. But I think, honestly, like in Houston, I wasn't myself. Like kind of what you were talking about earlier, you almost put on a false front, because people don't want to hear what you're going through. Like,
we all have masks. We're all different people
masked. I like
with
that.
different people.
Right.
Different people. Like,
and so I think I wasn't being honest and transparent with my Houston friends. Mm-hmm. And so they didn't even know. Mm-hmm. And so basically I would go out and I'd have a great time with them. And then when I was alone, I was having these thoughts and I never brought them to light to anyone.
What was your turning point where it was like, something has to change? Like,
honestly,
this isn't working.
I mean,
Curveball.
Think I realized the change I needed, and people are going to hate me for saying this, but at least at my old firm, was moving away from my old firm in Big Law. Like, I was working a ton, and I honestly, fitness has always been a part of my life, and I wasn't doing that, wasn't lifting, wasn't just kind of lost track of who I was. I was gaining weight. I was drinking 5 times a week, 6 times a week. And when I mean drinking, I mean getting hammered on a Tuesday night. But I just realized this is not the lifestyle I want to live. And in order to change it, I need to change jobs. I need to change cities. I'm working a lot less, which has helped me prioritize my personal life, which has brought me happiness, which has made me feel better about myself, make me more confident about myself. So yeah, if that answers your question.
I'm really glad that you made that choice and whatever.
Me too. Thank you.
Pivoted.
Thank you. And it really is just so progressive. I mean, you start to do things and then they become kind of habitual, and then they become part of your DNA. And then you're a year down the line, you're like, who the heck am I? And then you become unhappy, and then you're like, okay, I need to change. I feel like that's what happened to me, because people don't understand that they need change until they're almost at rock bottom.
We all learn self-awareness a little differently and at different paces, but it's being able to oh, this is getting worse. This is not stopping.
Yeah, it's almost like looking, it's like people you surround yourself with, they don't, everyone changes, right? But they don't really change to you physically, because you're around them every day. But you don't see someone for 5 years and you're like, holy crap, what happened to you? In a good way or bad way, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like that. You are living your life and you're going through these events, and you don't really stop and reflect until after quite a bit of time. And then you reflect and you're like, what am I doing? Why am I friends with this group? Why am I doing these drugs? Stuff like that. So I guess last question, we'll kind of wrap it up. But for anyone, just last piece of advice you might have for anyone going through any form of depression, whether it's, I'm just sad, I lost my job, I don't know what my purpose is in life, I want to end my life, like anyone going through some form of depression, what insight, what advice do you have to those people to let them know that they're not alone and that it really is only temporary and that there's a better aspect and part of life to look forward to?
The first thing that comes to mind is like a cliche of like, it's brighter in the morning, right? It's a new day. Or even like I have told myself, like, I just have to get through today without doing insert maladaptive coping skill or whatever. And I'm like, I can do it tomorrow. And you just keep repeating that and just like finding something that like is your purpose, that like this fills my cup, this brings me joy, this makes me feel like the me I want to be. And kind of that like, what am I doing? What choices am I making? And do they align with the person that I want to be? So it's kind of trying to be aware of like the slippery slope and progression of like, okay, a timeout to actually sit with yourself and reflect. And that was, we like to run from it and we don't want to admit to ourselves that like, hey, I'm struggling or there's problems. But if you go and you take that time, it's scary as shit. But like, that's what you need. It's like, here, you're forcing that like, oh, I do need to change. And so if you do that and you're able to do it before there's crisis or early on in the crisis, like, how do I pump the brakes before I'm hitting the brick wall?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That we are all valuable and human, and you're never alone in what you're going through, what you're thinking. Like, maybe it's not the exact thing, but somebody has had very similar feelings or thoughts, and have a great conversation. That's what we all really, I think, truly want. However we try to attain that, being able to be seen for who we are. We have to figure out who that is first.
Yeah.
Which can take a whole lifetime. I love it. Awesome.
What you just said in this last hour, I think it's going to change some lives and impact some lives. And I'm so excited to get this out to the world and let them hear your words. Because I really do think people are going to hear and relate to you in a lot of ways. And what you just said will save their lives for some people, which is why we're doing this. And, it's amazing. So,
well, thank you so much, Alexis.
Yeah, thank you, Alexis.
I just can't thank you enough for your boldness and your courage to tell your story and just be honest and open and transparent. So thank you. And I really hope this, and I'm actually certain this will help people out there currently going through something. So you're awesome.
My work here is done.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alexis. Appreciate it.